Miren, bañador, en las chanclas, todo despeinado porque no me dio tiempo nada ponerme las chanclas y el bañador. Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. Jesús. Jesús. Había subido la marea y encontré una paella. Y la encontré porque estaba la paellera agarrada metida entre las piedras de Chipiona, del faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y adentro la 20 paelleras. ¡Asómate, mira dónde llega el agua! Llegaba el agua hasta el restaurante. Había subido la marea. ¡Jesús! ¡Hay que hacerlo ahora! Con los dos sacos de arroz. ¡Ay, llama para Sevilla! ¡Llama a Sevilla que traigo paella!
Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video. We got a very hot topic to talk about, but before we get into it, I just wanted to thank everybody again. We're at like 24.3k subscribers. You guys keep subbing. We're going to get to 25 really quick if you keep hitting that button, so thank you all for that. And again, 25k, we'll start the doc series, and I'm excited. I'm going to have to get to work pretty soon, I'm pretty sure. It's crazy. Anyways, I want to get into the topic of Tickatus. If you aren't aware, Alec Dawson on Twitter, one of the lead devs, card designer guys on the Hearthstone team, tweeted out that nerfs are coming, like we were talking about in This Week in Hearthstone, that they have decided on 6 cards that will be nerfed. We don't know what they are yet, but we do know that they'll be coming out next week, and we know that it'll be a mage, paladin, rogue, and neutral card. So you can kind of put together, it's like Deck of Lunacy, probably the paladin weapon, maybe like Secret Passage or whatever, but we've already speculated enough about nerfs. We're not going to do that for the billionth time. What I wanted to talk about is a card that's obviously not on the list, and that's Tickatus. Tickatus is one of those cards that I see brought up more than Deck of Lunacy, more than the Paladin Weapon. I see Tickatus brought up more than any other card in the game that people hate and want nerfed. And why is that? Why is Tickatus brought up so much? And I thought about it, and I've gone through the pros and cons, and I've come to the conclusion that I really do think Tickatus should be nerfed. It's one of those cards that creates just an unfun experience. And let's get into it. Let's dive in to Tickatus, and let's start by going just first on like the history of like discard effects in Hearthstone. The earliest stages we really saw of discard effects in Hearthstone was like Naturalize and Cold Light Oracle. Naturalize being a druid spell that would make your opponent draw 2 cards, you kill a minion, you could mill them that way, or Cold Light Oracle, which would draw 4 cards and you could mill them. You had to mill them. One was a neutral option, one was a class card. Both were eventually Hall of Famed as they were kind of problematic. They didn't like the whole milling aspect. They felt it was unfun, especially with Cold Light being a neutral option to mill people. They didn't like that, and they Hall of Famed it. They didn't think it was healthy for the game. We've also seen mill mechanics just be a staple in Warlock for quite some time. We had Gnome Ferrat, who was a 2/3 that would mill 1 card. You could couple it with like Bran to mill a couple cards, or in Wild you could go like Bran Zola. I don't think that combo ever existed in Standard, but you could do that in Wild. So that, you know, that's a bit of cheap mill and a bit frustrating, but again, it was like 1-2 cards typically in Standard at the time, and it was part of their identity and was never really a prevalent meta card. We also had like Void Contract, 8 mana, you like delete half of each other's decks. It was terrible, saw almost no play, and basically because, well, it hit your deck too. It was pretty negative. And we had Rin, the Disciple, saw a little bit of play, but again, it was incredibly slow. It was super slow. You had to play like 4 or 5 portals. They were 5 mana. They're really no tempo. They were like 2/2, a 3/3, a 4/4, a 5/5. And then at the very end of it, you would play a 10 drop. You'd spend all 10 mana. And we didn't have like corrupt cards to sheet out with it or anything like that. And then he would delete the rest of their deck. It was a real hard thing to get off, and it wasn't very, you know, very meta. It was like good against like control warriors and stuff, but it was really, really not great. And even that card had a little bit of hate towards it, but was never a super meta player. And even like the newest card in the latest expansion, Altar of Fire, it's 1 mana, you destroy 3 cards, but from each player's deck. This card has seen a little bit of play on like the self-mill Warlock, but more for the effect of milling yourself than your opponent. So Why am I talking about these cards? Well, they're all kind of bad. They're all, for the most part, pretty bad, and intentionally so, because milling cards for your opponent feels terrible. It's not a fun experience. But then Tickatus comes in, and I hear the argument, it's a 6-mana do nothing, but it's a 6-mana 8/8. Don't forget, that's a big demon. You can copy this with like philosophy. And then there's also the whole, getting another copy off of Yashiraj for 0 mana, which you can cheat out with like Cascading Disaster, Strongmans, where that's not really a bad tempo play. Does it play a 0 mana 8/8 with free removal and free taunts? So as a result, Tickatus is like the strongest mill card ever, and it destroys 5 cards. And when you play multiple of them, 10, 15, and a while with Bran, basically the entire deck, and boom, you win the game against any slower deck. I've seen write-ups, I've seen arguments that only bad players don't like Tickatus. All like the try-hard top 100 legend guys, they're always like, oh, I play my aggro deck or my combo deck and I kill my opponent by turn 6. It doesn't matter. Well, the majority of Hearthstone players, I hate to break it to the pro players of the world, don't try hard that hard. They don't all play the very best aggressive decks. People like to play control, like to play combo, like to play slower decks. And when Tickatus, as you can see by the stat, is in over 10% of total decks in Hearthstone, it's at like 11% with a plus 50% win rate. It's a meta card. It's a very good card. And when you couple it with like a buff Jiraxis, which no other class in the game can compete with that end game, Jiraxis is now the only hero card in standard and the very best late game win condition. You couple Jiraxis with Tickatus and the corrupt package and the insane healing with the soul fragments. Basically, you're going to stomp on every slow deck. Yes, the weapon rogues of the world don't care. They don't care about the cards they burn. They don't care about them playing a 6-mana 8/8, but a lot of players really do, and it creates that really frustrating experience. I just think cards like Tickatus are bad for Hearthstone in general. Same with Elucia. Elucia has that same feel, where if it's a powerful card that steals your hand, deletes your deck, does all that stuff, it creates such an awful experience. It upsets players. It literally it just upsets them. It absolutely upsets them. It makes a bad experience. You log in to play Hearthstone to play your cards, to play your deck, to do that stuff. And you can bitch and moan about stuff being OP, like the Paladin weapon being too good or Deck of Lunacy being ridiculous, but at least you're losing to something that's just broken. It's overtuned. But with Tickatus and Elucia, it feels like to a lot of players that Blizzard is actively attacking them, is actively punishing them for playing their game, because they're creating these cards like Tickatus, like Elucia, that actively harm people. Even Igzar has said in an AMA and stuff that he likes to call the cards that like Tickatus and Elucia are good for mean people that like to disrupt people. They're mean people. They want to disrupt you. And that's the thing. It hurts you if you're a nice person and a mean person deletes your deck. And that happens repeatedly, not just once every like 100 games. It happens 10% of your games or more. You might not just want to log in. You don't get to play the game. It's a frustrating experience, and it's very polarizing. And that's why I've had all these videos about like Deck of Lunacy against the Paladin weapon. I still hear about Tickatus more than any other card. So for that reason, despite the fact that the card is not OP, it doesn't have an insanely high win rate. Warlock itself, Control Warlock, doesn't have an insanely high win rate. It's a good deck. But Tickatus, as a part of it, creates such a toxic and unfun experience that I feel like the majority of Hearthstone players, not all of them, there's people that love Tickatus, would be in a happier state if a card like Tickatus was like 7 or 8 mana and a lot harder to pull off, and maybe they could actually play a slow control deck and not auto lose and have their entire win condition deleted. And it's just frustrating, especially when you had cool cards very recently added to the game, like Cthulhu. They delete a Cthulhu piece, your entire strategy is gone, and it feels awful just because your mean opponent played that Tickatus card, even if they're bad players like a lot of these pros like to say. So that's why I think Tickatus is bad for the game. There's very little counterplay to it as well. We don't have a Dirty Rat. The best thing you can do is like Vol'jin. They have to play a minion. You have to hit their minion, hope to swap it with Tickatus, and then it's just rough. So maybe if there was more counterplay, I'd be okay. But again, even Elucia doesn't counter it because you have to Elucia it, have it uncorrupted, and then play it and delete their deck, which is highly unlikely. So that's my take on Tickatus. I don't think it's healthy for the game. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's ridiculously good. I just think it creates a really unfun, toxic experience that people just genuinely don't want to experience when they log into Hearthstone, more so even than like Deck of Lunacy high roll, that they can be like, well, at least that'll get nerfed because it's broken. Whereas Tickatus is like, wow, that just made me feel awful. So let me know in the comments below what you think about Tickatus. Do you want to see it nerfed? Do you think this effect is fine for the game? And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.